Museum, das von Karl Friedrich Schinkel gebaut wurde.
Okay, so I'm back from a 2.5 hour boat cruise. Just take the train back to the district where my hotel is, and the main reason I booked here is because it's easy to get back tomorrow to the airport, but it's east side. It's the East Side Gallery, what they call this, the East Side Gallery, which is all the paintings on the Berlin Wall, and the famous one. You can see behind the cars there, but it basically stretches the whole of this street from the Mockter Bridge, which you can just see in the distance, all the way down to this street. And as Reagan said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall, and he did in 1989. But it's still standing, but obviously no guards. There would have been guard towers along here, and a no man's land just behind the wall, which I'm going to go and walk on in a minute once I manage to cross this road. Arena. I'm going to cross the road and walk in no man's land, where we had been shot not too many years ago. So there we are, the section of no man's land where there have been guard posts and we'd have been shot prior to 1989. Let's go and have a look at some of the war. So the East Side Gallery. So apparently God's a woman and she's a black woman. So I was going to visit the Berlin Wall Museum today. Now there are several, but the best one, and the one that isn't a rip-off and a tourist trap, actually includes part of a visit to no man's land and a guard tower, and lots of the wall that's still there. But it's Monday and it's closed, so I can't go there. So we'll have to put up with just having a look at the wall and the East Side Gallery. See if we can get a view of the Mockter Bridge here coming up. the guard towers would have been along here. I'm assuming in the places that the wall wasn't, so maybe there's a big gap. I don't know. But obviously lots of people died trying to get to cross east to west. David Bowie Heroes. It's about a guy that jumped in to get to the other side to see his girlfriend. He wished he could swim, like dolphins could swim, but he was shot. Here we are then. So the refugee Anton Walzer was shot in the Spree on October the 8th, 1962 while swimming towards the West Berlin riverbank. To prevent these kinds of escapes, fences and walls were erected on the East Berlin embankment in 1961. Armed border soldiers were deployed there and boat companies of the border troops patrolled directly on the Spree. Hello, welcome to my video. So I'm sat opposite the Berlin Wall, East Side Gallery in Berlin, and I've been on my travels. So I left Inverness on Friday and stayed Friday night in Spandau. I was excited to go to Spandau because I went to visit Hitler's horses, horses that were made by Joseph Turak, that sat outside the Reich Chancellery. Actually sat outside Hitler's office, two of them, one either side of the office. He would have seen them every day that he was in his office. But were taken by the Russians, put into a Russian army camp, basically used as target practice. They were then taken, sold to a private collector, and only retrieved a few years ago. And the private collector obviously didn't want to give them up, but it was illegal for him to have them. They were the property of Germany, and now Germany have used them and put them in Spandau Citadel for everyone to see. So I was delighted to see them, get some photos and videos of the two horses. And after that then I went to, a bit sad I know, I went to a supermarket, but the supermarket is actually on the grounds of what was Spandau prison. It is exactly the same footprint there now. The car park and the supermarket is exactly the footprint of where the prison was. Nothing to see of the prison, but there's still an area where you can see Albert Speer's gardens and the place where Rudolf Hess had his summer house and where he committed suicide with the electrical flex. So that's, you can't see that, but you can see the area. And I got some drone shots of that, so it's good to see the drone shots. And you'll see those on this video if you're watching along. Then I went down to, on Saturday, went to Coburg. Now, Coburg, the historical home of the Nazi Party, the first place to have a Nazi mayor and the first government building to fly a swastika. So that was good. It was the first. It was a pitched battle between in 1922 between the National Socialists and the Communists. The National Socialists turned up on German Day. They were invited along, so it was about 800 of them, took a private train from Munich with Hitler and his merry men from Munich in October 1922 for the German Day, which is like a folk festival. They went there and were met by jeers and spits and aggression and violence and stones throwing by the local communists. It was a communist stronghold, the town. The town was held by the communists. It was one of the biggest communist parties, that area. But the Nazis won. The National Socialists won. They stayed there nearly 48 hours before they got a private train back. But it then became a National Socialist stronghold, and as I said, the first place in Germany, or the first place in the world to fly legally the Nazi flag, the swastika, and install a government official in their town hall there as a Gauleiter, as a mayor, if you like. So that was Coburg, and that was good, nice bit of history. Then on Sunday I went to Weimar. Now Weimar was where the Weimar Republic was signed off in 1919. after the First World War, and the democracy and having a monarch. They left Germany. It didn't work. The people wanted something different, and the people voted for a democracy, and the democracy was signed off in Weimar. So that was Sunday's visit. And there was a few other bits and pieces to see there. I've just done a project on Fritz Sockel, who was the Gauleiter of Weimar. So he was one of the National Socialists, eventually an SS member or one of the top SS guys, but he was the Labour leader for the National Socialists and responsible for bringing millions and millions of people, Polish, Jews, etc., to Germany to help the Third Reich to man the farms, to man the armaments factories, to increase war output. So he was responsible for getting millions and millions of people uprooted from their homes onto trains to Buchenwald, which is next to Weimar, one of the concentration camps, and to many other places as well, to help the Third Reich sustain their war output. He was one of the ones in Nuremberg that got hung. Unlike Hess, unlike Speer, who ended up in Spandau prison. And today, so that was yesterday, so there were lots of history yesterday, and it rained a lot. I got some drone footage of the Gau Forum. So the Gau Forum, Weimar was the model Nazi town, and the Nazis uprooted, changed the course of a couple of rivers, and built the Gau Forum in the centre of Weimar, and that was going to be the model Nazi town. So a lot of towns were going to be based on Weimar. Didn't happen because the war started. They didn't have the manpower or the material to do it. But that was what the feeling was in the mid 30s, that we would make Weimar like or the first Nazi town, and we would. There would be many towns that follow on from that. It would be the model town. I stayed at the Elephant Hotel in Weimar last night, and that was built by the Nazis, or rebuilt by the Nazis, reshaped, remoderned by the Nazis. And Adolf Hitler actually stayed there 8 times himself. So I stayed there last night. Beautiful hotel, all good. And then today I brought myself back to Berlin. I go home tomorrow, but Berlin today I did a tour. I was going to go to a few museums. The ones I want are closed, unfortunately. But I had a nice cruise on the River Spree for a couple of hours, and I'm now touring a little bit, as you can see, of the East Side Gallery, preparing myself for going home, and then back to the hotel shortly. So I'm back after over a year. I was here in March 2024, and they had a festival on, so I couldn't get into the museum. I came in and paid a fortune to get into the festival under the promise I could get into the museum, and I couldn't get into the museum, it was shut. So literally I've travelled from Inverness today, up at 4:30 this morning, and to come and see the horses. So there's a few other statues as well that I want to see. But this is Berlin Spandau Citadel, and yeah, excited to come here since for many years, but certainly since the last time that I was unable to get in and see them. So literally just arrived, just checked into the hotel in Spandau. It was chucking it down with rain, so it's nice to be here. It's dry. I'm packed up with my drone and my camera stuff. Probably won't use the drone here, but I want to go to Spandau prison site shortly, so we'll see what happens. Yeah, it's a bit different than the last time I was here. So I've just paid my money, and been told by the man that there's 2 horses. There's one up here and there's one just round the corner. So okay, in to see the second horse now. Okay, so I've made my way to the location of what was Spandau prison. I'm actually at the back of what Spandau prison, or where Spandau prison was. This used to be the gardens. You can see Albert Speer's flower beds, raised flower beds here. This is where he did his gardening. And just behind the supermarket trolley shelter there and that lamppost is where Rudolf Hess had his summer house, where he did his reading and sat writing for 20 years in solitary confinement, basically, and where he committed suicide. So literally, just about where that tree is in the middle there is where Hess hung himself with his electric light flex cable. The trees, obviously, they would have been around in the day of the, well, in the 70s and 80s for sure. And the linden trees here that you can see in the distance, they were actually planted by some of the prisoners when they were imprisoned, obviously in the 40s and early 50s. So they're that old. So that's the perimeter of the prison. So it used to run diagonally down here, and that's where the prison wall was. And there was 5 guard towers. And as we say, it used to go up to there, where the prisoners' gardens, or Albert Speer's gardens, shall we say, but the prisoners' gardens were, and pretty much on that footstep of that, what they call Kaufland, which is like a, I don't know, a shopping, it's a bit like our B&Ms, I suppose. Right on that footprint is where the prison was. And I'll take you around now to show you where the main entrance was. And people used to access it. All these that you can see in the distance, and you can probably see from my drone shots, they were obviously ancillary buildings where the soldiers and the workers used to stay. But basically, the footprint that we're on with this car park and with this supermarket is pretty much exactly to the square foot, to the foot of where the prison was, Spandau prison. So it may seem a bit weird coming to a supermarket when I'm not shopping. I've come how many thousands of miles to get here to have a look round a car park. But I suppose there's a method in my madness somewhere. So I walked the perimeter. There's a guard tower sort of centrally there where I'm pointing the camera at, and then there was one in this corner. And as I turn the corner, there's one in that top right corner there. I'll show you. So I've turned the corner. I'm now heading up the right-hand side of the supermarket, or the prison, if you were. These buildings were here back then. Obviously the prison closed when Hess died in '87. This is the perimeter wall where this fence is, and there was a bit of a no man's land, or a bit of a road behind the wall. And up in this top corner there was another lookout, armed guard, 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for over 40 years. What an absolute waste of resources. Okay, I don't know if you can see that building there now. It's a health building. That wasn't there. That was the main entrance. And I'll walk round to the front of the road, on the main road, and I'll show you the front of that. So that's where the main entrance was. So what I'll do, I'll put a picture up so you can get your bearings. So that's the main entrance. These buildings were here. And obviously, use a bit of imagination. That was where the prison was, exactly where that building was. It did stick out a little bit, and there were some sort of ancillary buildings connected to it, etc. But basically, that's what we're looking at. Before I go around the front, just over here was the British Army camp. And I don't know if you can see it, but basically just behind this building the big red brick building there. I'm not sure if that big red brick building was part of it, but just behind that was where the army camp was. That's where the British army camp was, so they didn't have long. When they changed the guards every month at Spandau, they didn't have that far to go. And obviously this was in West Berlin, so this was the British sector, if you like. During the war, not during the war, but after the war, the British Army set up their main base in the Olympic Stadium, which is not too far from here. And then after the war, obviously when it was the four allies, they set up, or there were several across Berlin, but one of them was just here, and this is where they used to use to man the troops, to look after Hess for 20 years on his own. I think it was about 40 guards, and then other people as well, obviously people, cooks and people doing laundry and all that stuff, those ancillary people. But some of them lived around, or most of them lived around here, but the army was just down there, just down that road there. Okay, we've come to the front of, I want to keep saying the front of the prison, but where the prison was. So this is the main road, so this is where everybody came to access the prison. This was, the pavements were the same, pavements haven't changed since it closed, since it was knocked down. Now, where this medical centre here is, that was the main entrance. So basically built over the main entrance. So, if we can imagine that the entrance to that health building was the main entrance to Spandau. So all those black and white pictures of depression and despair, that when you think of Spandau prison or what that brings to mind, you normally see the front entrance, which was like an old arch building. That's exactly where that was. Well, just behind that building is where it was, but that was the main entrance. So the road used to run from this road, take a right here, basically through the main gate, up the driveway into the main gates of Spandau, and as we said, right behind is the supermarket. So that's a new building, obviously, because that was the main gate and the main driveway, and buildings either side, they were here back in the day, back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, up until 1987, when Hess died and the prison was demolished and all the forces were able to stand down. We'll continue our walk up past the main gate. We're still at the front of the prison. Oh, I keep saying prison. Still at the front of the building of the supermarket. There's a security building there now. Obviously that was all ancillary buildings for people that worked for the prison or had dealings with the prison. I'll take you in to the right hand side of the supermarket, and this would have all been fenced. This was where all obviously the perimeter fence would have been, and there was another lookout, 24-hour manned gun post, turret, lookout, whatever we want to call it, just around here as well on this side. So we'll go back in around. These are those linden trees that we noticed from the car park, so they were again planted round about, certainly when the prisoners were here. And if you can use your imagination, that's where the wall ran all the way around. All the way. We'd see the front, if we were looking at here back in the 40s, we'd see the front of Spandau jutting out just about there. And there we are. Completely changed, obviously for the better. We're going to grab a taxi back to the hotel, but for now we'll just walk along the what would have been the front of the prison. And there's the health building there just in front of us. Obviously, as we've said previously, that's the main gate and the main drive up to the prison. And then right in front of it would have been the main exit. So we'll walk past the main entrance, so we'll walk past the main entrance, coming up on our right, past all the red bricks. So a lot's changed since 1987. Back in to the main car park of the supermarket. And I'm going to find myself a taxi.
It's a mystery to me.
Well, here I am at Coburg station, 4 hours pretty much to the dot since I left Spandau this morning, so it's 10:30 on a nice morning today, no rain today. So we're at Coburg station, and yeah, October 1922. was Hitler and 800 of his pals came here on a special train just then, invited by several Völkisch groups to German Day in October 1922. I don't know which way I go. Yeah, as I was saying, met by hundreds and hundreds of Russian communists, because this town was a bit of a Russian enclave, or a communist enclave I should say, nothing to do with the Russians, but a communist enclave back in the 20s. Nobody had heard of the National Socialists back then. But yeah, Hitler came with 800 of his pals and basically left the train station, marched down here. Most of them weren't in uniform. Marched down here, there was a brass band playing, they had flags flying, and they were met by the communists with hatred. They threw stones, they spat at them, they shouted at them, they swore at them. But that wasn't putting the Nazis off. The Nazis continued on their parade, were met by the police and were ushered into a beer hall, which we should go and have a look at later. But basically it ended up in a 24-hour brawl. There was fights all over the little town, with the communists leaving this place as a Nazi stronghold pretty much after that. This area, even up to Weimar, where we go tomorrow, was a Nazi stronghold after that. And if the Nazis didn't win that, if the communists hounded the Russians out, the communists out, there may well not have been a Nazi party, so that may have been the end of it. No World War II, no Holocaust, no 50 million deaths, but who knows. This was the start of it anyway. This little town, this is their birthplace, if you like, their first fight, the Nazis' first fight. It was fists, there were no weapons used, it was all fists and aggression and violence. In 1922, but this is what led then to the putsch down in Munich in 1923, a year and a little bit later, which basically paved the way for the Nazis to take over all of Germany and their fight for Europe. Okay, let's go and find the hotel now. Well, this is lovely. Just checked, well, I've not checked in, but I've just dropped my bag. It's only 11 o'clock in the morning, so I've dropped my bag off, and they were very helpful. They kept the bag, give me a tag, and I'm on my way into town. My first bridge. I've just seen a pussycat, but I don't think it's going to be very friendly to me. Okay, so we've reached the centre of Coburg, the market square, and that's the Rat House, or the office building, the first building in Germany to actually have, I'm going to get out the road because I'm going to get run over, to actually display a Nazi flag. It had a Nazi mayor in there from 1929, and they displayed the Nazi flag in 1931, so it's the first building in Germany to be turned over to the National Socialists, and obviously this was the first town to be turned over to the National Socialists in October 13th, 14th, 1922. obviously took a few years for them to gain a stronghold, to gain a foothold in Upper Bavaria or in Bavaria itself. But in 1923 they had the unsuccessful Munich Putsch, where Hitler was locked away for a couple of years, well, sent away for a couple of years, whether he was locked away for a couple of years, where he wrote Mein Kampf, etc. But this was the first building in Germany to display a Nazi flag. Prince Albert displayed in the centre of the market town square. It's a beautiful walk. Well, we're not there yet. I'm sure it's a long walk and I'm puffing already, but it's a beautiful walk up to the castle, or what they call Coburg. We're back on a rainy Sunday morning after our beautiful day in Coburg yesterday. We're back at the railway station and looking down the tree-lined avenue, see where the first Nazi attack took place, where the 800 or so from the NSDAP, which was the German Workers' Party, in October 1922, where they left the railway station, walked down here, drums playing, bands playing, flags waving. Must have been quite a sight for the locals who were expecting a nice German Day celebration, a festival of life in Germany. Little did they know, or that they did know, that they were going to be attacked by the local communists, which were out in number, but obviously the Nazis outnumbered them and basically took over the town, raised the Nazi flag, and this became their first stronghold. From this they realised that they could actually go places, and the SA, the stormtroopers, had more of a uniform. They got caps so that they could stand out even more, and they reinforced their group when they went back to Munich on the next day. So I mean, on the day after the pitched battle, the fights, the aggression, they got a train back to Munich. Originally, the local people or the local people in charge of the train service, because of the trouble, said they're not going to they're going to ban the Nazis from taking a train. But I think Hitler went up and said, well, if you do that, we should just kidnap one of the drivers and demand that he take us there. And obviously they didn't want 800 odd Nazis strolling around their town, so they wanted them gone as quick as. So on the Sunday they went back to Munich, all self-funded. You know, there was no money for the Nazis back then. It was all self-funded, so every party member begged, stole and borrowed from family if they didn't have the money to go for the train tickets, etc. It would have cost a fair bit back then, obviously hiring your own train and making your way to a town several hundred miles away. I've just come across another stumbling stone. There's lots over here. There's lots around Coburg. Large Jewish population, and as this was the first Nazi stronghold, this and Weimar, where I'm going to go later, was the model German town. So they didn't want Jews, they didn't want handicapped people, they didn't want homosexual people, they didn't want Romani, they didn't want anybody that didn't fit their Aryan look, beliefs, race, religion to be around. So this is where they shipped them all off to. I'm just heading back to the railway station now, down the avenue. This is where they headed them all off to concentration camps, which I'm hoping to go to Buchenwald later. Let me have a look. What was the? I don't know if it tells me where this person went to. Dachau. This person went to Dachau, which is obviously just southwest of Munich. Yeah, horrendous. What are we talking about? Oh yeah, Buchenwald in Weimar. So Fritz Sackel, who we'll talk about later, was in charge of Weimar. He was the mayor, he was the Gauleiter, and the Labour leader, and responsible for millions and millions of slave workers to Germany, to fight, to build ammunitions, and to be used as ancillary workers for the Third Reich. We'll talk about him later, but he was the one that got Buchenwald up and running. They needed a concentration camp for all these people. They needed a work camp, so all these people worked in Weimar or around, building armaments and munitions. So they were all piled in hundreds of thousands of them into Buchenwald. But they worked them to the bone. They didn't feed them properly. They worked long hours every day pretty much, and it was a sorry sight, and the majority of them died. Okay, we're going to help. There's no coffee to be had. There's lots of youngsters around. There's lots of drunk people around, which you wouldn't expect. Well, you expect pretty much everywhere, I suppose. But it was a Saturday night last night, so I'm sure some of them have been out all night. I just bumped into a couple of Polish guys who were lovely after cigarettes, but obviously being a non-smoker I couldn't help them. But yeah, nice guys. But they'd obviously been out all night on the tiles. Anyway, I'm heading back to the railway station. I've got half an hour to burn. I was hoping to grab a coffee, but nowhere to be open. It's Sunday morning. There's nothing going on. Just one last look at our tree-lined avenue. The Nazi Party leaving, and that's not changed, that railway station. The main facade of that railway station hasn't changed. Leaving that railway station, heading down the tree-lined avenue into Weimar, and that takes you directly into the centre. And they marched, they waved their flags, and they were a merry band of National Socialists until the fighting started. But they left victorious, and they left back the same way they come the following day, back on the train, back to Munich, back to their families, back to Nazi Party headquarters in Munich for bigger plans for the Munich Putsch, November the 11th, 9th of November 1923, so just over a year later. But it all went wrong, as we know. But what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Okay, welcome to Weimar. And Weimar railway station, which hasn't changed at all since the National Socialists, Nazi flags, swastikas flying from those three windows. And this is where all the forced workers came, whether they were to stay at Buchenwald or camps outside of Buchenwald. This is where they came. Hundreds and thousands of forced workers deployed by Fritz Sauckel. We're going to have a look at his place shortly. March down here, and obviously this is the model Nazi town. Coburg was a practice. If Coburg was a practice, this was the real thing. Designed to be the model Nazi town, and all other Nazi towns were to be based upon this one. And again, Jews, anybody else that weren't welcome in the Third Reich, were deported and sent to concentration camps, whether that be Dachau or forced labour, eventually Buchenwald. We'll see what the day brings. The statue of Ernst Thälmann, who was the leader of the Communist Party in Weimar. And obviously communism and National Socialism doesn't go. So he was got rid of, sent to Buchenwald and died. And there's lots of things here to remember. The residents of Weimar that were sent away to concentration camps or death camps in the Third Reich, Germany or Poland. Okay, we've reached the Gau Forum, which was built by the National Socialists in the 30s to represent or to be the perfect or model German town. Offices of the National Socialists, planning department, etc., for forced labour, for town planning. And this is where Fritz Sokol, the labour leader, responsible for millions and millions of forced labour and deaths throughout the Third Reich, had his office, and his office was in that corner turret or corner office. As you can see there, it says museum, which we're going to hopefully go and have a look at now. So this was housing. This was people's houses. This was residents in the early 30s, and they were just kicked out and sent away to enable this Gau Forum, or this perfect National Socialist office building and centre. There was an exhibition hall. There was a place they could have concerts and speeches and parades in the centre there. I think underneath now, I think it's car parking, and that there is a supermarket or lots of shops. Anyway, a shopping complex. It's quite strange to have studied this place, looked at many photos to actually be here. So we're going to see if we can find. Well, I've got my backpack on, so I might have to find the hotel and drop that off, but I'll find the museum on the way. And I'm pretty sure that the museum I need is actually where Fritz Sokol's offices were, just in that corner building there. But we're going to have a look. There's a couple of signs for different museums. We'll go and have a look and see what we can find. But this hasn't changed, apart from obviously the shopping complex and the underground car parking. This hasn't changed since the 30s. The buildings remain exactly as they were, how they were designed to be, with larger than life windows, larger than life doors, to make everyone feel a bit smaller than they actually are, and to make the National Socialists a bit bigger than they actually were at the time. Not that they lasted very long. In typical Nazi fashion, big sweeping arches, massive windows and big doors. So leaving the Gau Forum, we'll come back here later. Hopefully it'll be a bit better weather. There's the Bauhaus Museum, sort of Weimar, giving birth to the Bauhaus movement. Abstract art, modern art, which was hated so much by the National Socialists and banned obviously in the 30s. The local town museum. The thing is, it's still early and it's Sunday morning, so I'm not expecting much to be open today really. I think the National Socialist Museum I want to go to opens at 10. It is nearly 10, but I can't stand around in the rain. I've done some drone shots. We'll go off and do some more adventures, and hopefully I'm here all day. Hopefully I'll come back to that museum later. Beautiful. Well, it would be beautiful on a nice day, just like most things, but it's pretty bloody miserable, to be honest, at the moment. There's always a way out though, if you like that sort of thing. Not for me, thank you. Okay, we're on the hunt for the townhouse where the Weimar Republic was signed off in 1919. And the statues of Schiller and Goethe, authors, poets, renowned throughout the world, but definitely renowned throughout Germany. And here we are. So up on our right side are the statues, and then the theatre, which is where the famous Weimar Republic was given birth to, which signed off in 1919 and lasted all the way to 1933 when the National Socialists took over, and everything changed. Democracy changed. Democracy was burnt, if you like, and freedom of speech, freedom of movement completely changed, and there was a totalitarianism and a dictatorship, as we all know, Adolf Hitler's dictatorship. And the 1,000-year Reich lasted 12 years, where it then became a diplomatic democracy once again. And I think here is the sign that tells me that the Weimar Republic was signed off here on the 11th of August 1919. Now I can't read German, but I think it says in this house, I don't know, the Weimar Republic was signed in August 19. The German people voted for democracy. 11th of August 1919, so a very famous building indeed, and lasted longer than the Third Reich, lasted longer than National Socialism. Wasn't given much of a help obviously by the Versailles Treaty and all the debts they had to pay back, all the war repatriations, the war debts they had to pay back, which crumbled Germany at the time into billions and billions of pounds worth of debt. But there were several things that helped them make their payments. They eventually stopped making the payments, they just couldn't afford it. Obviously in the stock market crash of 1929, everybody was out of work, everybody was hungry, there were soup kitchens opening up everywhere, and it sort of saw the end of democracy in Germany, and people wanted a new leader, people wanted a new way forward, because they had no jobs, because they had no food, and because there was somebody that said that they could change it all. They could give them work, they could give them food, they could look after their families, they could even give them a car and holidays once or twice, once every 2 years. So yeah, all things being equal, that's what got the National Socialists into government and put democracy in the fire, so to speak. It's a beautiful place. It's not so beautiful in the pouring rain, but it's a beautiful place. Right, let's go and see if I can find one of the museums that I've promised myself that I'm going to visit while I'm here, before my little feet get tired out. Let's go and have a look, see if this is open.
Was sollen wir folgen? Ein Bürgerkrieg? Den Zerfall des Reiches? Eine Besatzung durch die Alliierten? Eine Revolution nach sowjetischem Vorbild? Alles von Deutschland.
Okay, so that was fun. So that was the history of the Weimar Republic, and it was a bit too close, wasn't it? And it was a good video, a very good video actually, telling the origins of the Weimar Republic, how it happened and how it ended, and about the Roaring Twenties, or they called it the Golden Twenties in Berlin for the rich and affluent, but the majority were in the shadows and didn't have money. And then I had a quick look around the museum. Most of it was in German, but lots of artifacts. And then I went out and had coffee and a cake and sat in the garden, which smelled of lilies, absolutely beautiful, and there was a violinist there. So that was a bonus, so I stayed down for half an hour. Anyway, I'm heading now back to the Gau Forum, where the museum should be open, and it's the history of forced labour under the National Socialists in the 30s and 40s in Weimar, and hopefully I'll get to see where Fritz Sackel, who I've just done an in-depth study on for my website, hopefully I'll get to see where his office is, but it's around here in this unit somewhere. So let's see if we can visit the museum. So that was interesting. That was tour of the museum for forced labour for the Third Reich. I just thought it would be about Weimar, but it was Europe as a whole. Very interesting. You could spend hours and hours and hours in there. Anyway, yeah, so the bell tower wasn't Fritz Suckel's office, that was a bell tower, but Fritz Suckel's office would have been one of those that we're looking at, part of the museum. But yeah, interesting. Right, on my travels. Okay, so I left the Gauforum Museum and the Museum of Forced Labour and made my way, I don't know, I must have walked 1.5 miles, maybe 2 miles, up to what was once the home of Fritz Suckel, the labour leader, the guy responsible, as we've mentioned before, for all the forced labour for the Third Reich. And that's where he used to live, that's his house. That's Fritz Suckel's house, called Villa Suckel. It's now a college, I think. So that's where he lived with his wife and 10 children, or 10 children obviously prior to the war. He'd lost a couple of sons in the war, so him and his wife and 8 children live there. Massive place, and I've taken some drone footage of that, so I'll put that on there now, and you can have a look at the drone footage of Villa Suckel. So worth the walk. It stopped raining when I got here, so I was able to get the drone out and have a quick flight over the rooftops, so you could see Villa Suckel and Villa Suckel's Fritz Suckel's gardens. Now I've got a 2 mile walk, maybe 1.5 miles. It feels like 2 miles with a dodgy knee. Walk down back to Weimar town centre, where I need to get a drink, and I'm hoping to check into the hotel early. I can put my big bag, I'll finish with my drone I think for the day, so I can put my big bag in and my drone in, let it all dry out, get myself sorted. I've got a few other little bits and pieces to see, and then see where it takes me. so far so good, and it would be lovely if this rain stopped for the rest of the day. We shall see. Okay, made it back to the main square now, and this is where in the 30s and 40s this is where the Nationalist Socialists paraded. There's the Elephant Hotel, so that's where I'm staying tonight. I'm going to go in and see if I can check in early shortly. That's Hitler's room, so where the balcony is, just behind there. He stayed there 8 times, so the Hotel Elephant is hundreds of years old. However, it was falling to pieces, so in the 30s Fritz Sackel and Hitler decided it will be used for party conferences, for parades, for celebrating Germany Day, etc. So they rebuilt it or remodeled it to what you see today. Now there's photos of Hitler standing out on that balcony waving to the masses of fans that are standing in Market Square. There's photos of Hess and Sackel and Himmler stood outside this hotel taking part in the festivities. So it's Hitler's hotel. He stayed there 8 times, built, modelled, not say by him, but it was decided by him that it should be the model Nazi hotel. And doesn't it look just like the model Nazi hotel? Yeah, town hall, Nazi flags flying, etc. And things going on here more than once a year, but definitely on German Day in October. Cheers. Okay, well that was a nice stay in Weimar, and hotel was lovely. We're heading back now to catch my train back to Berlin.